Hey everybody, welcome to the Jen Lowry Author Facebook page where tonight we are having a Facebook Live party because I do these with all of my releases because I love to share the inspirations behind the stories that I write. And this is the one that we're featuring tonight. It is a magical Christmas wedding. Now, I am going to try my best not to cry through this thing. At the very beginning of the book, I will tell you that I did, instead of a foreword, I did a Dear Reader letter because I wanted the reader to understand right away. I'm going to zoom in on this. That this book was written in honor of my mom and my dad's marriage, their beginnings, and this is probably going to be really difficult for me to talk through tonight. It probably will not go the whole hour because you probably do not want to see me bawl for a whole hour. But I did want to come on and talk about the behind the scenes of my Christmas romance. So my mom, my dad passed away in 2007 and my mom passed away in 2009. Well, before she passed away, she was an extreme Hallmark fan. She even had VHS of Hallmark movies, and we still have a lot of those tapes, of Hallmark tapes. Every year, we looked forward to having our Christmas celebrations, and the Hallmark movies were a part of that build up to Christmas. And even if we'd seen the Hallmark movies tons of times, we would just repeat. We would watch them over and over. Now they make so many, it's almost like you could watch one for the whole year. But I'm talking about in like the mid 2000s, early 2000s, it was a huge event for us. So my mom would call me if I wasn't at the house visiting, or she would tell me what was on. And we would set our TVs and we would watch them, even if we were not together. So we were always into all of the Hallmark Christmas romances. And I never thought that I was going to be this way. But after my mom passed away, I was never able to watch any more Hallmark. In fact, just the whole romance category in itself, it was really hard for me to watch those movies. Hey, Janelle. And so, let me show you the cover. Look, you can see I've been putting the pictures online. And I'm talking about the inspirations behind A Magical Christmas Wedding. And so for years, I was unable to watch Hallmark. I still have not made it there. In order for research for this book, I actually was going to try to watch a Hallmark movie. I got kind of midway through and I was watching it by myself, which is probably not a good idea if you're trying to overcome that kind of grief moment. I had to cut it off. Thank you. Look, I love it too. And so the movie that I did get through was You've Got Mail. And that was only because my husband sat with me and held my hand through the whole thing. And so I also had the tradition where every Christmas we had to watch You've Got Mail. And then with my dad, I had to watch A Shop Around the Corner, which is the inspired movie with Jimmy Stewart that started the You've Got Mail with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. And so I even had the Jimmy Stewart version. My dad got me that copy. So my dad and I would watch that every year. And so, of course, that's Mac's favorite. In the book, that's her favorite movie, A Shop Around the Corner. So when it was getting close to going back to school, I can't even remember what date. I'd have to go back and look at the podcast to kind of do a documentation timeline. But I saw the advertisement where the Hallmark channel, Hallmark has their own publishing company. And in order to send, you have to have an agent. But for the month of September, you could send a Hallmark proposal if you had a 75,000 word manuscript, and they have all of their guidelines on their Hallmark Publishing website. So I said, okay, I'm going to challenge myself. Because I had already written the middle grades books, I did the YA books this summer, I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this for my mom. And so the whole time that I was, writing this manuscript, I was really channeling my mom and stories from my family. And it just kept just evolving and going. But I knew I was not going to meet that deadline. Hey, Daniel, it's so good to see you. So I was like, okay, well then now I can pull away from what the Hallmark requirements were, and then it can become what it's meant to be. So then I didn't rush through it. I didn't try to meet a certain parameter and a deadline. And then I started back into chapter 1. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to be able to pull in all of my Christian elements in here and just let the Holy Spirit go with this book. And that's why I am grateful that I was able to do this book on my own. So my friend, she messaged me the other day. She said, I'm in a Hallmarky mood. Hey, Daniel. Because I've been saying that on the podcast, that it's like Hallmarky, Hallmarker-ish, however you want to say it, because it still has that feel to it. It is a clean Christian romance, and it has a journey in it that is very special to me. And so I want to share a little bit of that with you. And I do not want to cry through it. I'm really going to try. So here on the cover, you can see this is Mackenzie Hart, okay? Now my mom was my Hart, so I just changed the last name Hart, H-A-R-T. So if I would have had a little girl, my mom was going to make me pretty much name my child Mackenzie. And so when I knew that I had to pick a main character for this book, it had to be Mackenzie. Like there was no doubt in my mind. Hey, Patricia, love you. There was no doubt in my mind that Mackenzie was going to be the lead in this. Now I'm going to tell you why my mama loved that name Mackenzie. She loved it because she was a Young and the Restless fanatic. So my mom was like the daily Young and the Restless fan. She did not miss her soap operas. And so there was a character on there, and her name was Mac. And she would always say, Jennifer, when you have a little girl. Well, I have not had a little girl. I had 2 boys. I did have 4 babies to go on to heaven. So if one of those was a little girl, I like to think that my mama has named her Mac in heaven. But I can name my characters Mac. So Mackenzie is the first name in this book. And then if you guys get a copy of Bridges, my Scottish paranormal romance young adult book, their last name is Mackenzie. And so if you read like book to book to book to book of mine, you're going to say, wait a minute, I kind of have heard Dorothy's name in here because that's my Aunt Dot. Like, you'll hear some kind of similarities, or you'll see some patterns maybe that can come out into my work. Music is in all of my books. I'm just going to go ahead and let you know that. And the music in this book is a time period piece that I absolutely adore. So I'm going to explain why. So I had to name her Mac. Now, I honestly, when my dude came up, I was like, had no inspiration at all about what his name was. His name was just Jordan. Like that was his name. And I don't have any kind of backstory, anything cool to tell you about it, except when I started typing, she was in love with Jordan and she was about to marry Jordan. And so that's who this is on our cover here. So you are now meeting Jordan. Now I do have a story about Jordan's last name. And he is going to get me if I show this, but he's not on here right now, so he doesn't have to know. Okay, so my best friend growing up. So my dad made me this book. So this is going to be hilarious, you guys, I know. So you're going to have to, because of course I showed my son and I had all the pages together and then we kind of turned through it. So these have a lot of my baby pictures in them. We're not going to have to go there. But I'm going to try to find my best friend in high school. His last name was McLaughlin. And that is what Jordan's last name is, to honor my best friend. And oh my gosh, there is a picture of us in here. And I'm looking for it. Okay. I'm going to show you the picture. Okay, you're going to have to kind of, so this is Leonard, okay? And that's Erica, and that's me, that's us in high school. And Leonard has been my best friend since, oh my gosh, 6th grade, Leonard. If he gets this letter, he can remember dates, he can remember all kinds of stuff. Like I can remember us listening to Poison with our headsets on the bus going on a field trip. That's like one of my earliest memories. Is of course it's tied around music, y'all, and it's Open Up and Say Ah, the Poison tape. I can remember that as the earliest memory that I have with Leonard. I bet you Leonard could even remember what the field trip was. Like his memory is like immaculate. I'm like, no joke. Okay, let's put the baby book up for a while. So McLaughlin is the last name of Jordan. And so I did that to honor Leonard in my life. Okay, so how does this thing all start? So I don't want to give the whole book away, but I do want to tell you some things in the book. So that way, if you do get a copy of the book, and you do, and so it's on Kindle, it's on paperback right now. If you do get a copy, I want you to say, oh, that's where she got that from. So I'm going to really try not to spoiler alert my own book. But there's so many things in here that mean so much to me. It's even like little small things that I have to just share it with you guys. So the way that the mom dresses in here is like the way my mom dressed. Like my mom had colored kids. Y'all, she had boxes and boxes and boxes of kids. And she kept the boxes, like no joke, they were a color of like the whole rainbow. And my mom loved to, like, she would wear the pink pants and she would wear a pink shirt and a cardigan and her pink kids. Like she was dressed from head to toe. And so the first scene when you meet Mackenzie's mom, yeah, she's dressed head to toe pink with down to her kids. And so that is exactly how my mom loved to dress. I did name the mom in here Janice. Now, I did have a lovely, sweet, wonderful aunt who is now gone on to be with the Lord. So Janice is represented in this book. She is the mom's name. Now, Janice has a sister in this book, and it's Aunt Shelby. And if anybody, y'all have to have an Aunt Shelby in your family. That's all I got to say. Y'all can fill in the blanks all you want. But I absolutely adored my Aunt Shelby, and my Aunt Shelby was a unique bird. That's all I just want to say. She was just unique, and she was lovely and funny, and you had to smile when you were around her. Like there was no other way to be if you were around my Aunt Shelby. So if any of my family gets this book, and Aunt Shelby is the character in here, y'all gonna be going like, yeah, that would be something Aunt Shelby would say or something like that. So it's Janice, and then there's Aunt Shelby, so that's those two characters. You already know about Mackenzie, and you already know about Jordan. So now I want to talk about the grandmother, June. So the reason why I chose June for her name is because that's my daddy's birthday. Now my daddy was born in June, but also my granny was born in June. And I was born in June, a week after my daddy. And my granny was a birthday behind my daddy the day before. And so if I had to pick a grandmother's name, then I could honor my daddy and my grandma that way by calling her grandmother June. So June is in the story, and June has a sister named Mags, and I really do not know where Margaret came from. I don't have anybody in my family. It was just her. She's just the sweetest little girl. She's a 9-year-old little sweetheart princess who wants to be an author. I absolutely love and adore Mags. Like if Mags could be on the cover like somewhere, I would have kind of like Mags, like right here close to Mackenzie's heart. Because Mags is just a truly special character. Another character in here Now, I have had students named Mark before, and I love the book of Mark. And so if people talk to me about, if they ask me like reading advice for the Bible, I always tell people, start with Mark. Just if you're in the New Testament, just go to Mark. Get Mark first before you read any of the other Gospels. And I always kind of lead people that way. And so when I had to pick a brother for Jordan, Jordan's older brother is named Mark. And Mark is very special in this book. I want to say that I just love and adore his character. I cannot wait for you to meet these people that are in this world of mine, of Crystal Falls. And no, Crystal Falls, North Carolina, that is not a real place. Now, if it is, I've never been there. That was just the name that came to me when I was creating this mountain town. So I just taken a trip to the Biltmore State. So I had taken my son to meet one of his best friend gamer friends that he has been gaming with for years online. And so we kind of found a meeting point over the summer, and it was the Biltmore State. So we drove to Biltmore. I got to spend the weekend in Asheville. And so I still had the love of the mountains, kind of like the mountains all wrapped up in my heart and in my spirit. And so if I had to pick a place again to write about, then it was going to be this place. Oh, hey, dear. That's my sweetheart right walking by. So that's probably what inspired the setting. It's just because I love the mountain regions of North Carolina. So that became instrumental in setting up the falls and thinking about the hiking and where could they meet while they were out for a walk, because those are things that I so enjoy doing with my family. So I say that, knowing that I love to go to different state parks and to be out in nature, that's something that's always probably also going to be reflective in a lot of my books, like pretty much all of my books. But that's where the setting is here. When you guys meet Jolly, okay, now Jolly, I want to let y'all know that is my English bulldog that I absolutely loved. He was my son, and he lived to be 6 years old. And when Rambo passed away, I was to the point where I said, that's it for me. I could not have any more animals come into my life because I lost my cat to cancer after 16 years. Zoe, and then I lost Rambo. But I can have Rambo in a book with me. And so Mackenzie has Jolly, who is an English bulldog. And he's such a smart old bulldog, just like Rambo was, and just a loyal dog. And so it just fit perfectly to have Jolly represented in here. So Jolly's throughout the book. And I want to tell you that when I knew that this was going to be a time travel romance. Now, I have always loved time travel things. I don't know if you guys, I wish I knew the name of it. I really don't want to misquote this Hallmark movie. But there was this Hallmark movie that I absolutely loved, and it was called The Love Letter. I know that's what it's got to be called that. I actually had a VHS of that. We loved it so much, and it was like a time travel and the clock and all of this. I don't know if any of you guys remember watching that one. But I have always loved time travel. I love the Outlander series when I was really young. And that, of course, is dealing with time travel. And so I was like, I'm going to do the time travel. And I even talk about it in the book, too. Because have you guys ever seen, like, the images? And it'll say, if there's the park bench, and if you could sit with anyone, who would it be? Well, Mac has always wanted to meet her grandmother. And her mom has talked about her grandma, her mother, June, every single day of Mac's life. And so Mac is about to get married, and Mac finds a special dress. And it is her grandmother June's wedding dress. She just knows that it has to be. And she finds it in the closet of her home, and hey, sweetheart, she finds it in the closet of her home, and of course she's got a child on, and then all of a sudden something happens to Mac that she did not expect. and she travels back. Now, if I had to pick any time period ever, it had to be 1955. And I'm going to tell you why, because that is the year that my parents got married. And so I did that to honor my mama and daddy. And so my parents have a wonderful love story. And this is the part where I don't want to cry, but my daddy, he left us a book. He left us books behind in 70-page spiral-bound notebooks that he wrote, and he put them locked all away. And then after his passing in 2007, we discovered his handwritten books, and so I typed them up, and so I actually have my daddy's autobiography here. And I've kept it in this notebook, so you can see here's the notebook, and it's pretty big with my daddy's book in it. But so the character in there, his name is Stan, and he reminds me of my daddy in a way. And I'm going to read this part too. Okay, I just want to read when he first met my mama. So you guys are listening to the words of my daddy. I'm going to take them out of the book. He's actually showing a picture of the car that he had. Okay, so I'm going to read this, and I'm going to try not to cry. I was sweet on a girl back then, Sylvia, who lived on 6th Street. I met Betty Lou on a double date. Now, my mama's name was Betty Lou. My daddy called her Betty Lou on many occasions. I'm just giving you guys the heads up on that, okay? That's why if you read the Hartwell Chronicles and you've got the Psychic Sisters, you've got Betty Lou and Dorothy Lamar because they were sisters. That's my mom and my Aunt Dot, okay? I met Betty Lou on a double date. She was going with Pat Jr. in September of 1951. Now, I think this is really funny because that means my mama was 11 years old, y'all. She's on a double date. Now, Pat Jr. was my daddy's best friend. I just love this story. I cannot make this stuff up. My mama was 11 going on a double date. Now, I know times were different back in the 50s, but let's just go on. This is about the time I first heard of Betty Lou. She was seeing my friend Pat, and he would tell me about his going out to see her because my mama lived out in a farm, and so they had to drive all out into the country to get to my mama. And she lived on a legit farm. So Dad put me on second shift working with a Barbara Coleman warper. And I actually had to Google, what is a Barbara Coleman warper? And there's the picture of it. This is when I made the book up. I guess that way he figured he would keep me out of trouble. Now, so when you read about Stan in here, I want you to think about this piece right here. It worked too. He would work me 6 days a week from 3:30 to 11:30 p.m. And on a Saturday night, I'd clean up. Sunday was the only day I had off, and most of the time I wanted to just rest up. I always did have a little crush on Doris. She lived down the street. And there was the cook girl, Evelyn, on the corner. So I liked a lot of girls. Well, enough of that. And he actually, well, enough of that. So that was my day. And so when I had to think of a character for Stan, I was kind of channeling my daddy on that, especially this part in the book. Okay, so now I'm going to read this love story to you, which I think it's hilarious. Okay. When I was at Fort Bragg, so my daddy was Army strong. I was a military daughter, but my daddy retired from the military. Served in Korea War and Vietnam War, and he was retired after I was born, so I came along later in their life. When I was at Fort Bragg, Pat was in the Air Force, and I remember asking Betty, Pat's girlfriend, to go to the movies with me. Her father let her go, but all the other kids had to go with us. I remember kissing Betty at the Lower Max drive-in that night, and she could really kiss just like Pat would brag about. I had not told Betty that I had made a bet with Pat that I could go out with her. And when I told Betty, I think she might have been a little mad, but I know her father was very upset and said she wouldn't go out with me again. I think Betty liked me, but I didn't see her again until her father passed away, and I did visit the family. I think that one night changed Betty's feelings for Pat. Well, my mama lost her daddy when she was 12 years old. So now this story means my mama was kissing my daddy at 12 years old at a drive-in, and it was off of a bed. Now, in this book, what ends up happening when Matt goes back in time, she's going to meet Grandmother June and Grandpa Stan, and it's going to be like overwhelming, out of this world, crazy for her. She's a history teacher at the middle school, so of course I got to have that teacher in there, y'all. And so she knows her history a little bit. She's able to get all back in there and try to kind of feel around with things. A Sound of Thunder had been written by then, so I was able to throw in my Ray Bradbury in there. But I channeled their love, because what ended up happening, and Daddy goes on to talk about this again in the book, but in his book, in his autobiography, but what ends up happening, and I'm just going to tell you guys the story. My daddy comes back into town, and my daddy goes out to see my mama. And my mama is 15 years old at this point. And he goes and he visits her every single day. So my daddy was on leave, and he came out to the farm and he visited my mama. And for a whole month, he saw my mama. And I just want to read this one part here. That summer, while on leave, I met the love of my life for the second time. The first week at home, I went to see Betty again, and that was the best thing that ever happened in my life. My dad. I lost all my sanity, and the love bug hit me hard. Betty was like a magnet for me. I couldn't stay away from her. I had never felt this way before, and I knew Betty had to be a part of my life until death do us part. Hey, dear. When I was with her, my heart speeded up, and I became a nervous boy, like in a candy store, wanting everything I saw. So when you see a line in there, something about a candy store, you're going to know where that was inspired from. The words of my daddy and how he expressed how he felt when he was around my mom. And so I will tell you that after that month, he ended up writing my mama a letter. And he said, "We're getting married on Saturday. Tell your mama." And that's how my daddy proposed. Now, there are letters that are in this book that are important, because they would write letters back and forth. Daddy wrote Mama every night, and so they have a collection of letters in here in a box. But it was not that way of proposals and things in here. Those are a little different. I still think that they fit the characters perfectly, though. But now my parents dated 1 month, and then they got married, and they lived happily together for 52 years. So I do honor their wedding anniversary in here. So my parents got married on September the 3rd. So if you see that date, you're going to know full well why I picked 1955 and September the 3rd. And you're also going to know later when you meet Bill. So you're going to meet a character named Bill Watson as a young boy. Then you're going to meet Bill as an elder. And Bill is my daddy's name, so my daddy gets put in there too. His name gets put in there. And I thought about him and how he would have been as a resourceful young man. I'm doing really good, guys. I have not had my breakdown, and I'm reading out of my daddy's book, and I'm sharing pictures with you guys, and I'm doing all right. But I want to show you a picture of my parents. Now, like I said, my daddy made me this book, and it's got tons of pictures in here that we don't need to be sharing with the world, unless you guys want a really good laugh of seeing me all dressed up, middle school, elementary school. Okay, so there are my parents. You see them looking all smiling and all laughing? Look at there. That's them. There they go. And they held hands all the time. And I tell you, that's in the book too. I had to give them props for that. But when I was pulling for this book, of course I'm writing this hallmarky Christmas romance for my mama. So I had to honor their love story in here in little ways. But I did pull in some things of 1955. Of course, I had to hit the music. We talk about the polio epidemic. We talk about the iron lung, and I did all kinds of research about vaccines and protections and all kinds of things during that time period. But I pretty much, other than that research, it was just pretty much the story that the Holy Spirit gave me to honor my mama. And so when you guys are reading this, I want you to imagine like you're sitting back at home, and it's back when those Hallmark movies, um, sitting back at home. Oh, sorry guys, I'm getting congratulations messages. um, just sitting back at home and just watching a Hallmark movie with a loved one. I want you to just think about a feel-good story that you could just wrap yourself up in, and that's what a magical Christmas wedding is all about. Now, I don't expect that this book will ever become a sequel. It has room to grow, though. It does have room there, and it can spread its angel wings and fly. So I'm not saying that it can't be. For right now, I have no plans of this book being a sequel at all. But I do know that the characters in this book live very close to my heart. And I can't express that enough. And that's one thing I love about writing books, is that parts of me and all of these crazy experiences that come along with who I am and my childhood and growing up and love stories and just family and connection, it all just gets wrapped up into this beautiful new thing. But it still has that same feel to it. And so if you haven't figured out by now, this is a Southern fiction piece of work. And it's probably always going to be the voice that's just going to come from me, that just resonates from who I am. I'm hoping that if you guys start reading the book, you start to notice some of these little things in and say, well, I'm wondering if that's real, or I'm wondering if that's what. So I'm going to read a little part to you at the very beginning. I said I wasn't going to go over, but I have. So I wanted to read one of my favorite poems ever in the world, Road Not Taken. Not sure. Let me get this, guys. I'm on Facebook. Okay. Never read that poem before. You should. My dear reader is for my mama. I'm gonna read this part here because if anybody is from Maxton, you guys are gonna know this one, because that's where I was raised up and love. My whole heart just love Robinson County. I cannot tell you guys enough, and so it's gonna be in all of my books. So I want to read this part. Mackenzie sighed as she parked in front of the tiny storefront down Main, and she rested her chin against the steering wheel to observe the liveliness of her little town. Construction workers lined up to pick up Bill's hot dogs on their break. She watched a couple of the guys were trying to balance snowballs on top of their yellow hats. Their faces were soft with jesting at one another, fighting off the cold with a joke or two. A mother was pushing her baby into Sarah's hair salon, probably praying the little one would nap long enough for shampoo. Sarah's was the place where she'd find herself soon enough. Having your hair done at Sarah's was a given. No other big city salons would do. When you went into Sarah's, it was like walking into your family's den and settling in. She'd welcome anyone and everyone with a smile and a story. Sarah had already met with Mac to decide on the perfect style for her hair. She knew without a doubt it would look lovely. Now that is for my town of Maxton. And the good thing about publishing my books and just being able to have that freedom is that I'm able to honor places, people, just experiences that I've had. And Sarah fixed my hair for my wedding when I married that handsome guy who was walking across the screen earlier. And I was at Sarah's hair salon, and I just had to put that in my book at the very beginning. And so if you're reading any of my books, you're probably going to say, now is this something that Jennifer, I might make you question just a little bit. You can always email me at jenlowrywrites@gmail.com, and you can say, hey, tell me about this person in here. And I'll say, no, I have no clue why I named Jordan Jordan. The only Jordan I really like, Jordan from New Kids on the Block. Like, I'm trying to think about Jordans. I have a little cousin named Jordan. She's not little anymore. She's grown. But I don't know where his name honestly came from. But if you're reading any of my books and you ever have any kind of questions like that, I'd love for you to reach out. And I'm going to tell you why I love doing these inspiration pieces, because when I was growing up, I would have loved to see authors like this. Of course, guys, I'm talking about I've always been an avid reader, but I never was able to connect with authors online. If I would have just had their backstories a little bit or been able to read about that, it would have taken me so much further into that V.C. Andrews world than I would have ever been before or something. You understand what I'm saying? And so that's why I love doing these Facebook parties. It's just for me guys to share with you the story of how my books kind of come to be and how they're crafted. I do want to tell you that I love just having all of the little special touches in here that I kind of know, my little secrets in here. Some I might not ever divulge. But I will say that I hope that if you get your copy of A Magical Christmas Wedding, you'll walk into it knowing that it was to honor my mama, and you will walk out of this book having met friends. Because that's what these characters, they're my people. And I love them all so dearly. And I'm just so thankful and blessed that the Lord has given me the opportunity to be able to share my work with you guys, to be able to have these author dreams and to go after them and write it all on Microsoft and send it all out there to the world. And so I just want to say to you guys that I appreciate all of you sticking with me for the Facebook Live party. And I hope to check you out soon. You guys send me emails with any questions. Thanks for all of your support. It was really nice to see my family. Oh, and I just saw Ann Dot's name down here. And oh, look, see, I got to learn how to scroll. It's really nice that all of you have come to the party. And I just want to tell you guys I love y'all. Y'all have a blessed night.